Ever since yesterday's video where we revealed all of the details surrounding the commander swap event, I've been getting tons of you guys asking me questions in the comments, on Discord, everywhere for more details about this event, specific nuanced things that maybe I didn't touch on or I glossed over in yesterday's video. And also a lot of you guys have been asking me for advice about your accounts, and I just can't possibly give every single person detailed advice for their account. So in today's video, we're going to do a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to answer your frequently asked questions about the commander swap event and the adjacent events surrounding it. This second thing that we're going to do later in this video is I'm going to share with you guys all the commanders that I think you should be getting from this event, all the commanders that I think are okay to swap and are safe to swap, and we'll go into all of that a bit later. But first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I am a partner created with Rise of Kingdoms, which means they support a few videos on the channel every month, but the most important support comes from you guys dropping a thumbs up down below and subscribing for more Rise of Kingdoms content. And double check if you're subbed or not, because 70% of you guys are not subscribed and you might think that you are. Okay, now the first thing I want to cover here is when this event is actually going to come into the game, and this is something that I completely glossed over because, again, yesterday's video was recorded at 5 in the morning, but this event will start on January 10th for some pioneer test servers. Okay, so some kingdoms that are going to be sort of the guinea pigs for this event, I assume, are going to get this event on January 10th. That's the soonest that you could get this. I don't know which kingdoms will be the pioneer test kingdoms, but that is the answer right there, which means the soonest that you can expect this event is January 10th if you're lucky. If not, this event will come to your kingdom at some point in the near future. I suspect it will probably only be a couple of days following this, the pioneer test. Okay, and for season 3 and season of conquest kingdoms, I suspect that this event will definitely come to your kingdom at least in the month of January, right? So again, we don't know the exact date at the time of recording this, but like at least between January 10th and 31st is like the narrowest range that I could boil it down to, and truthfully that's being very generous. I suspect it will be much sooner than the end of the month. We just don't know for sure, so I don't want to guarantee that. As it says up top here, details are subject to the official update in game, so you will know as soon as I know when this event goes live for your kingdom. But what that means is, now that you know when this event is coming, if you don't have 12,000 gems at the time of watching this video, your number one goal between now and then, between now and January 10th, is to farm as many gems as you can, especially if you're in KvK, and save up all the gems that you can from events and different ways of obtaining gems, being in the strongest alliance in your kingdom, so that way you can get them, chaining barbs, doing everything that you can to get gems right now between now and January 10th. Do it, because you want to have at least 12,000 gems by the time this comes around. Okay, now the other thing I want to touch on here is one of the questions that I was wondering, and that is, why can you only swap a commander once, right? I didn't think that that made a lot of sense, because I thought, like, okay, let's say you swap Martell for King Arthur, why would you then swap King Arthur for somebody else, right? Like, you wouldn't do that logically. But what that means is you can only swap Martell once. Okay, so I'll explain that in just a second. But the other thing I want to touch on here is that I am almost 100% positive that you can swap gold key commanders, because they are not listed as a exception here. The only commanders that they say cannot be swapped are the gatherers, Barca, Minamoto, and Ethelfled, which makes sense, which means I could expertise my Lubu right now, which is crazy to think about because I do have him unlocked. But anyway, the reason you can only swap a commander once is, you know, I'm going to use this as an example. Let's say I have a fully expertised Martell and I have a 5551 CPO prime, right? Let's say I wanted to swap those two, so then I would swap and make CPO prime expertised, and because it's a swap, that would make my Martell 5551, right? Because that's what CPO was. Then if they didn't limit this, what you would then be able to do is swap that 5551 Martell to, let's say, King Arthur, right? And then, you know, if King Arthur was just summoned, then your Martell would be 1111, King Arthur would be 5551, and CPO prime would be expertised, right? And then you could go ahead and, let's say you had 900 sculptors left over of Martell, you expertise him, and then boom, you basically did all your swaps at no cost besides the gems, right, and the bundle. So that's why there's a limit here. So that answers that question. It's so that way you can't like swap around all these different commanders. You can just, you pick 2 commanders, they swap, that's it. You can't use either of them ever again for this event. Okay, so that answers that. The next thing that I want to cover here is the bundle purchase. I was wondering how much this would cost, and the answer was right in front of me. Okay, so basically you can get 10 lifetime purchase limit 10. So this is effectively, as you can see here, it's 1050 gems. So this is the $5 bundle. Okay, so you can purchase the $5 bundle up to 10 times, which is insanely good value. Okay, I thought this was going to be a full bundle purchase of $385. It is not. It is $5. You can buy it 10 times. So for $50 you get 120 swap tickets, and you get VIP points and gems here, which is beautiful. And this makes this one of the best bundles I think you can buy in the game, especially for a low and mid spender. Like if you have 2 commanders to swap for, then you should be buying this bundle if you can. Okay, and it's also nice that it comes in increments of 12, because let's say you don't have 2 expertise commanders that you want to swap, then maybe you can only do a 5551, for example, in which case you would only need 72 more tickets, and that means you don't have to max purchase the bundle to get 72. You would just buy this in increments of 12 tickets until you get 72, and then you're good to go. So great news for the bundle. This is extremely low spender and mid spender friendly, and of course if you're a whale you're gonna max I mean, like, it's a no-brainer, right? Also worth noting is that this bundle does not contain anything else as far as I can tell. So there's no resources, there's no speed ups, there's no anything else. It's just gems, legendary swap tickets, VIP points, and then your alliance gets a stone chest. Okay, so that is the details for the bundle that I wanted to touch on. Again, $50 for 120 tickets is a no-brainer for me, and I would highly recommend that you guys use the store.lilith.com, because this will let you purchase flux scripts, and this also means that you can get 10 of the $5 flux scripts for a discounted rate. Okay, you also get your hands on some of these tokens, which you can use for other bundle purchases in the future. So this is literally like, this is what you want to buy if you want to get all 10 of those $5 bundles. I'm going to be buying this right now. Actually, I'm going to buy this right now. I wasn't kidding. I literally just bought it while filming. Again, this gives you 10 flux script 3s, which you can redeem for $4.99, and I also got some flux coins as well, which is really, really cool. I would recommend that you guys do not buy this until it comes into the game, because remember, it does say details are subject to change. So, you know, it's possible they could change this bundle before it comes out, which would be a bummer. But I know for me that I'm going to use those $5 tickets anyway, so I might as well buy them ahead of time, because what if they get rid of them from the store.lilith or whatever the website is. So anyway, that's a little trick for you guys. You can save a little bit of money, you can get some flux coins while you do it, and that's going to get you all 10 of these, and that's probably the best way to do it in my opinion. Okay, the other thing that I want to touch on here is something that a Goose and Leo said in this video, and that was that the bigger the difference between these commanders that you're swapping, the more it will cost, right? And we know that the higher end of this is 120. We know that the most extreme example of this is 120 tickets, meaning the Arthur was simply summoned. He was level 1, he had 1 star, his only skill that he had was his active skill, and that was at 1, right? This was the most extreme example, and it cost 120 tickets. The big question is, what if you had summoned King Arthur prior to this, right? And then instead of immediately swapping, what if you brought him to level 60 and got him to 6 stars, right? So in that case, he would be 6 stars, level 60, 1111, and then you would be swapping him for a 6-star level 60 Genghis Khan, and when you would do that, that would effectively make your Genghis Khan 6-star level 60 1111, right? The question here is that if you do this for your commanders prior to swapping them, like you bring them to 6 stars and to level 60, does that lower the cost in terms of tickets, right? Because if it does, that might make this an extremely valuable thing to do, because these tickets are probably, you know, this is a once in a lifetime or once in an account experience, right? You know, this is only going to come around one time. And so if you can save a few tickets here and there, and, you know, especially if you're a free-to-play player, let's say you have a ton of extra stars and experience tombs, in order, you could exchange those for that commander and effectively reduce your ticket cost. We don't know how much it would lower it by, but if it lowers it by, you know, a significant amount, that could be worth it, right? You know, now if if you bring them to 6 stars and level 60 and it lowers this to, you know, 116 tickets, then it's like, is that worth it? I don't know, probably not, but like we'll have to wait and see until it comes to the game. It could be the case that the ticket cost is exclusively linked to the difference in skill levels, and it completely ignores the experience and star levels, and that does not affect the cost in tickets at all. I suspect that the experience level and star level has some influence on the ticket cost, but I think that the primary driver of the cost of this swap will be the skill level difference between the two commanders. So I suspect that perhaps you'll be able to save some tickets here by bringing it to level, you know, 60 and 6 stars, but I don't know how much of an effect it will have. We'll have to test this and see. It might be a good little hack to save yourself some tickets, but again, we'll have to test this. So this is definitely something to consider going into this event if you want to start, you know, saving experience tombs, saving gold stars, just in case you might be able to save some tickets here and there. That's something that you might want to consider right now before the event comes around. The other thing that I want to touch on here is that there is no mention of excess sculptures, right? And so by that I mean that for me, for example, if I come in here to my Cao Cao, I can show you guys that I have so many extra sculptures of him, it's insane. I have 952, right? And what we know from the commander swap event is that it swaps the current, you know, level, star level, and skill level of the commanders. And we also know in the fine print that it does actually swap the record of the commander. So I guess Cao Cao is not a great example for me, but let's say I was going to swap my Sargon. And if you're wondering, should you swap Sargon or not, we'll answer that question later in this video. But what it says specifically in the update video, let me just pull it up here so you guys don't have to just take my word for it. But if we pull up this screenshot here, you'll see that it says swapping commanders will also swap their upgrade cost records, right? So what that means is that I suspect that it will, you know, swap the historical record of what you use. So for example, if I swap Sargon for King Arthur, then I come into King Arthur's page, it'll show that I used 189 King Arthur sculptures, 501 universal sculptures, right? But what it also means is, let's say you have a, you know, I have a 5515 Tariq and my next skill up for him costs 75, right? What that means is if I swapped my Tariq for King Arthur, who I summon, then my King Arthur would be 5515 and his next skill would cost 75, right? So that's something important to note. But again, my whole point was it doesn't specify what it does with the excess sculptures. Even my Caesar has 106 extra sculptures. My Freddy, let's see what I have for my Freddy. My Freddy, I have 103 left over. So as you can see, what I would likely do for me on my account, and if you're a very old player, this will apply to you as well, is that I would just look at the commanders that are eligible to swap that I have over 690 sculptures excess of. So for me, Martel and Cao Cao would be my two primary swap targets, right? Because what I would do is just swap these to a new commander and then just use my leftover sculptures to expertise the commander again, and effectively I will not lose anything other than the stars and experience that I need to re-level up those gold key commanders, which I would have spent anyway on the new commanders that I had summoned, right? So that's the big question here. They do not explain this at all in the video. We do need clarification from the developers about this. Will this be a limitation? In theory, based on how they've described it in their video, we should be able to keep our leftover sculptures, right? They did not mention sculpture swaps at all. All they mentioned was swapping the existing skill level, experience level, star level, and upgrade cost and upgrade history. There was no mention of sculpture swaps, right? So I suspect that we'll be able to keep these extra excess sculptures, which is a huge advantage for us older players, by the way, who have these, you know, gold key commanders double or triple expertise, right? A lot of you have even more sculptures than I do of Cao Cao because I have over 1800 gold keys waiting to be opened. But I would definitely wait for more information here just in case this is also swapped, right? You know, it seems to me, it seems too good to be true that we get to keep these excess sculptures, right? It seems too good to be true, but based on all the wording and all the information that we've gotten so far, it seems like we'll be able to keep those excess sculptures. I'm going to hold off a little bit more before I get too excited, just to double check and triple check and verify when this event actually comes into the game. Okay, the next thing that I want to touch on is actually something that is shown in the Vietnamese version of this reveal video, and that is that if you swap an expertise commander for an expertise commander, it still costs 2 tickets, right? Which I'm so confused why this would be the case, and this is one of the reasons why I'm thinking maybe it also swaps the excess sculptures. Like there's, I mean, am I going crazy? Is there any reason why you would swap an expertise commander for an expertise commander? Like we are swapping their star levels, doesn't do anything. We swap their skill, their actual level, doesn't do anything. We swap their skills, doesn't do anything. After you spend these 2 tickets, you will have 2 expertise commanders still, right? So I'm super confused about why the Vietnamese video shows this and why there's even a cost here to begin with. Maybe I'm looking too much into this. Maybe this was a mistake, an error, whatever the case might be. Don't swap expertise commanders because it will cost 2 tickets and you'll get nothing, I think. The other thing I want to point out here that was shown only in the Vietnamese version of the video is the final tab up here. Now this is for the Gathering of Heroes event. This is the event that allows you to recruit legendary commanders that you do not have. And again, I think the purpose of this event is simply to get your hands on the commanders that you want to swap for, right? Because you need to own the commander in order to swap for them, or to them I should say, and I think that's the purpose of this event. So the Gathering of Heroes event, I was wondering in yesterday's video what that last tab was. I joked that maybe it was gathering commanders, because obviously we have infantry, archers, cavalry, leadership, engineering, and it looks like the final tab is literally just healing speed ups and legendary commander sculptures. Again, it's also possible that this is not finished. This is purely footage from a test server, right? But this is good news for players who, you know, do not have any commanders that they need to obtain from here. So if you're a mega whale and you have Gorgo, you have Alex, you have Huo, you have Ragnar, you have all these commanders, and there's just nothing that you actually want from this, then you can exchange this currency for universal commander sculptures, which I think is really, really good. And we know that according to this, it looks like a universal commander sculpture. I don't know if it actually shows it here or if I missed it earlier, but it looks like this costs 100. Yeah, it costs 100 of that currency. Okay, so again, this is subject to change because this is clearly test server footage, but I just wanted to clear that up for you guys. This event will still be useful for you guys even if you have all those commanders unlocked and expertise. The other thing shown in the Vietnamese version of this video was a sort of exclusive King Arthur event that will allow you to unlock him in a similar way that we got our hands on Ragnar Prime. This I think is maybe exclusive to the Vietnamese version, because this is not the way that we will in theory be unlocking King Arthur, at least in the worldwide version of the game. I don't know where this event comes from. We already saw in the English version of this video that he's going to be unlocked for free by completing the sort of checkerboard pattern. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Yeah, it's the King's Trials event. This is how the official Rise of Kingdoms English YouTube channel has revealed we're going to be getting King Arthur, so it's free 100%. So I don't know why the Vietnamese version of the video shows this, and if this is exclusive to only their kingdoms. Possibly. Does the Vietnamese version have its own kingdoms? I don't think it does. So I don't really know what's going on here, but I mean, look, if I can get more King Arthur sculptures from this, it might be worth it. So just wanted to point that out. Don't worry too much about this. We should still be getting him for free from this event. So that's that. But then again, this event also exists in the Vietnamese version of the video as well. So maybe we're going to be able to get King Arthur for free from this, and then also you'll be able to buy him from the bundle just like with Ragnar. Either way, you get him for free, so it's a win-win in my opinion. So that's really exciting. The last thing I'm going to point out here before I give you guys some swap advice is that in the Claim Commanders event, this is the event where you get all the commanders from the tavern. What's really interesting about this event that's revealed here is that Siyaj is not listed in the rewards preview, and yet if they scroll down, you'll see that Lady Six Guy actually is in the rewards preview. And so this raises a few questions. First of all, is Siyaj just not gonna go in the tavern? Like, is he just not gonna be a gold key commander? Because I could have sworn that they announced he was a gold key commander, but like, now that I think about it, maybe we just assumed he was a gold key commander. And if that's the case, how else could we get him? Like, for example, we know that the Mayan civilization is going to have its own events where you can get him for free, right? So getting him for free for most kingdoms, at least the newer kingdoms, that's a no-brainer. We know that's going to be the case. But I mean, could we be getting him in some other way for free? Maybe. I don't know. I suspect that this is going to be a gold key commander. Okay, let me just be very clear here. I suspect that he will be in the gold keys. Definitely he will not be part of like the Mightiest Governor or something like that for for Season of Conquest Kingdoms. He's not part of like the Archer release window, right? But it just maybe this is just the rewards that you get at the time of recording this, right? So for example, Siyaj will not be in the tavern when this event is around, but Lady Six Guy will be, and that's why he's not here. Or even more interesting to think about or hypothesize on is that maybe we'll be getting Siyaj in some other way, might be some other event. Something tells me that's probably not the case. He'll probably just go in the tavern, but you just won't be able to get him from this, which is a little unfortunate for people who wanted to get their hands on the new legendary, but also he's not very good in my opinion. I made a whole video talking about him in a couple days ago, so if you want to know if Siyaj is good or not, I would recommend taking a look at that video. But yeah, he's very cool looking, just not very powerful in my opinion. Okay, next, let me give you guys some swap advice here, because I've gotten so many questions from people asking, you know, should I swap? Who should I swap? Should I swap this for that? And what I would sort of point you to is, you know, if you're a free to play, well, let's just say it like this. It's effectively an inverse tier list, right? And I've sort of rebuilt it here, but like if you look at my most recent tier list video, which I posted right at the end of 2024, which, like, if you didn't see that video, you should definitely watch that video, because that will give you all of my updated thoughts on the current tier list in Rise of Kingdoms. Of course, since that video, we've seen King Arthur come out, who is obviously at the very top of this list, right? So really the way that I'm looking at this is sort of a tier list, and what you want to have is the commanders at the top of the tier list, and what you would be willing to get rid of would be the commanders at the bottom of the tier list, right? There's a couple of nuances here that change that, however. So for example, if you are interested in getting into ranged combat, this might be the best time ever to do that, because you're going to be able to swap two commanders, so you can literally get Gajamata and Cordoba. If you have them summoned already, you could just get them expertise right away. And we also have the armament swap event as well, and so you can actually swap your armaments over to ranged, and boom, you now have a whole new troop type. The only downside to that is that you have to make equipment for it, right? But really it reduces the barrier to entry significantly, because armaments are a big deal, commander sculptures are a big deal, right? So that's something worth considering. So for me, I put the niche category because these are commanders that, you know, you may want to get rid of depending on your scenario. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Also, if you're watching this video and you're a Rally Garrison player, then you know from experience that you probably shouldn't get rid of your Rally Garrison commanders unless they're just so old, right? This is, I mean, we're talking about commanders like Wu, right? Like Wu is probably never going to be even meta adjacent, right? Same thing with commanders like, I mean, maybe Theodora. Like these are really old commanders that you're probably never going to use again, but at the same time, it's like, who knows, right? Like maybe Charlemagne's a rally commander hilariously, Suleiman is a rally commander hilariously, right? So, you know, if you're a Rally Garrison main or player or a whale, right, then you probably should keep your Rally Garrison commanders unless they're mega old, because you just never know, right? You really just never know. I mean, Attila is still used in some rallies to this day, for Christ's sakes, so you really just never know. All right, so if you're a Rally Garrison player, this video is not really for you. You probably know what you want already, and also you're probably a whale, and so like you could just get whatever you want. Like that's who should be Rally Garrison players anyway. Of course, down here's the cannot swap category, but the nuance, right, comes in these top four categories, right? I would say everything in this tier is safe to swap. So these are the gold key commanders: Charlemagne if you had it, Lubu if you had it, Genghis Khan, Edward of Woodstock, Wu, Leonidas, Suleiman, and Zuma. I think all these commanders are safe to swap, and here's why. You might be saying, well, Omniarch, Charles Martel can be used for lots of great things, right? And that's true. And if you're an infantry garrison main and you have the triple museum relic upgrades from Martel, maybe keep him, but that's a very small percentage of the player base. And besides that, like, is Martel good in the field these days? Not really, right? Even though he is arguably one of the best gold key commanders, some would argue he's the best gold key commander. I don't think he's the best gold key commander for open field fighting. I think that still belongs to Mehmed or Thutmose, but either way, you're just not going to use him in the field, right? Even though he's good, you're just not going to use him in the field. So these are all commanders that I think are safe to swap. The other thing you have to consider though is some KvKs have support skills, right? So for example, El Cid, his fourth skill is extremely good as a support skill. So I personally won't be swapping my El Cid for that reason. But like, if you don't have many other things to get rid of, then is it better to have a fully expertised, you know, King Arthur, or to save your El Cid for a support skill, right? I would say it's better to have a fully expertised King Arthur, right? Assuming your El Cid's expertise and you're going to swap them, you know, same thing with like Cao Cao. You might be looking at Cao Cao and you're saying, well, you know, Omniarch, like he's good for rallying forts and he's good for peacekeeping. He's killing bards, right? And that's true, but again, you have to consider, like, is that worth keeping him for? Like, yes, that's good to have, but I would rather have a Ragnar Prime, right? Like expertise for sure. So like, you know, don't be mistaken, you are sacrificing something for this swap event. And really what we have to think about is what's the thing that is most worth sacrificing, right? So in the case of these commanders, you're losing their support skills. In the case of other commanders, you might be losing the ability to use them in a KvK that has artifacts, right? In artifact KvKs, you can convert a commander into a different troop type. So for example, in my most recent KvK, I converted YSG into a cavalry commander and I put him behind my Huo, and it performed about as good or better than my William, right? So that's something to keep in mind, that artifact KvKs are very popular. They're continuing to come out and they'll probably continue to come out in the future, right? So in those instances, you might want to keep commanders that are meta adjacent that you could use for a different troop type in those KvKs. So in that instance, you might consider keeping something along the lines of maybe an Artemisia. You could swap her into something else, or you might want to keep your YSG for the exact example that I just told you. You could use him as a cav commander, you could use him as an infantry commander, right? So these are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about commanders that are worth swapping. But commanders that you should be swapping to are all the commanders in the top row here, right? I think all these commanders are great things to obtain. I think that, you know, the current cavalry meta will be a combination of Huo, Nevsky, Joan, and King Arthur. It's just a matter of, you know, how are you going to pair these two? I'm thinking obviously you're going to use Nevsky and you're going to use Huo as the primary commanders, right? So really it just is going to come down to, is it Nevsky with King Arthur, or is it Nevsky with Joan and then King Arthur goes behind Huo? It's really, you know, we're gonna have to do some testing. I suspect we're in the William scenario once again, where whichever army has King Arthur is going to do better, right? So it probably doesn't matter what, you know, you could swap them around, whatever the case might be, but that's how I'm looking at it here. So these four definitely going to be part of the cavalry meta. These three definitely going to be part of the infantry meta. And then it's just a matter of, you know, do you want to grab William Wallace or do you want to grab Alexander the Great to flesh those out? Probably not worth getting Guan Yu unless you're running 3 infantry armies. And then the single best archer army, I should say, would be this. Other commanders that you could consider getting if you're going to run more than one archer army would be something along the lines of obviously YSG with Ashurbanipal. Those are great options to choose. Of course, Nebu still okay. Boudica Prime definitely past your prime. But what I want to explain here is, why are some of these commanders in the good to have category, especially Sargon, right? I know you guys are looking at Sargon and you're thinking, Omniarch, why is it good to have Sargon? He's trash. And you're right, Sargon's garbage, and really you should not be using him in the open field. Like, just straight up, he's not good in the open field right now. And what's important to think about is, you know, we've seen with the Delta formation and with the circle formation and with the arch formation, these are all formations that have sort of changed the way that we look at commander compositions. And it's possible that over time we're going to get a formation that is for damage over time, right? And suddenly we could have Sargon be meta, right? Now, is it likely he'll be meta S tier? No, right? No, but it's a non-zero chance. And if we look at, you know, what's the probability that a commander like Sargon or a commander like Harold become meta later down the line, just like Alex did? Remember, Alex was written off as effectively useless before Liu Che came out, right? Like, he really could not perform. And then we got Liu Che and we got the museum relics for Alex, and all of a sudden you can run him in the open field. And in my most recent 2 KvKs, Liu Che Alex was my best performing March, right? So in a world where this KvK2 commander has in 2024 became one of my best commanders for PvP, that makes me think like, well, hang on, there might be some older commanders here that could also do the same thing Alex did. And so in that same way, Sargon could, you know, become meta later down the line if the stars align. He gets himself a good relic, he gets himself a good commander pairing, another damage over time commander, and then a formation comes out that just blows damage over time out of the water, right? And then all of a sudden you wish you had Sargon. Same thing with Harold. Harold has like his procs of his active skill are just insane, right? They're insane. And even though the damage factor is a little bit low, again, like we just never know, especially like with the Delta formation coming out with combo attacks, and like more commanders could be coming to the game that could trigger like combo attacks could trigger the active skill of Herald Stamford Bridge, right? So at least as far as I remember, I have to double check now, but regardless, my point is that there's unique things that some of these commanders are doing that you might want to keep them for. Same thing like with William. I mean, YSGs just sell it all around. William Wallace, the silence on Guan Yu is really good. You might not want to get rid of that. The swarm effect of Belisarius Prime is really good. You might not want to get rid of that, right? So even though some of these commanders you could argue are trash, I mean, you look at commanders like Richard, like why would I want to keep Richard? Well, you know, if you have an expertise Richard and you want to swap him, that's probably fair. And then you could just get him again at 5511 through wheels over time. That's possible if you want to do that. But you know, like commanders like Constantine are still decent in Garrison, but also like you can use him for Sunset Canyon, and in that way, you know, he kind of more so belongs in niche, so I'll give him that. You know, maybe we'll put Richard down here as well, just to be a little bit more transparent about what I'm thinking here. But Zhang Yu, again, for example, like lower rage cost, like his active skill has a nice debuff, like you could just pop off active heals. There's things that you can do with these commanders that are interesting, whereas you look at a commander like Martel and you might be saying, well, I think Martel is better than Sargon, and you might be right, right? Probably not, but you could be right. You at least can make the argument, right? And so while that might be the case in your opinion, the reality is that Martel is just a counterattack damage beat stick, and that's very vanilla and very boring. Really, there's not much that we could do unless down the line we see like an insane counterattack damage formation, in which case you might want to use them again. But my point is, you have to look at this tier list as a probability. What is the probability that these commanders will become meta again later down the line? And I think that, you know, that's why the okay to swap category exists, because it's like they probably won't be meta again, and they don't have as many interesting things as, for example, the good to have commanders have, but it's a non-zero chance, right? So as you go down this list, the commanders become more likely that you should swap them, excluding the rally garrison and niche categories. These are outside of this tier list, basically. Think of it that way. So yeah, I think the commanders in this safe to swap category are exactly that. It's safe to swap these commanders to something in the top row. Okay to swap would be commanders you can get rid of here to get something in the top row. And then the good to have are commanders that, you know, if you have to get rid of them for the top row, you can, but just be very careful in doing that. And if you already have the top row expertise, then you might consider getting one of the commanders in the good to have row. Okay, and the top of that list would be like these commanders here. I think those are like the most, like, you know, these 6 in the back are ones that maybe you don't need. I guess you could pull Shajara up. Maybe it's these 5. These are like the least likely to be relevant later, but you know, it is something worth mentioning. Would I spend 120 tickets to get an expertise Herald these days? Probably not, right? But if you have him, I would keep him. You know, that's kind of how I'm looking at this. So that's kind of my blanket guide for you guys as to how you should be thinking about this. The question also becomes like, should you get, you know, if you're free to play and you have 12,000 gems, then you can only do one full swap from a summoned commander to an expertise commander, right? It costs a whole 120 of the tickets. Is it better to do that, or is it better to get, for example, 2 5511 commanders, or a 5551 commander and a 5511 commander? And the answer is it really depends on your account, and you know, if you have commanders to pair with those newly obtained legendaries, and if you do, then maybe, right, maybe depending on where your account is at, but most likely the best thing you should do would be to get one powerful expertise commander that's going to last you a very long time. And at the top of that list would be commanders such as King Arthur, Liu Che, Ragnar Prime. I think these are like some of the best, and Zhang Yu, right? I think these are like the best of the best commanders right now that you might not have. Beyond that, you know, Harmon Prime is great and CBO Prime is great. And then these 3, honestly, I think these 3 Cav commanders are at the bottom of the must-have list, but even still, they're great to have if you don't have them. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about this, you guys. Hopefully this has helped you come to a solid decision on who you should get rid of and who you should get rid of it for. I think a lot of you guys are going to be getting King Arthur, which I think is a great choice. Just remember that you need to have a good pairing for him, right? You need to make sure you have either Nevsky or Huo, most likely are going to be his best pairs, and you know, make sure that cavalry is the army that you need to improve the most, right? So if you're currently running you know, let me just paint an example for you guys that you might be in, right? Like, let me just say, let's say you're running a Liu Che with Alex. Okay. Let's say that you're running a Nevsky with Joan. Okay. Just ignore this for a second. Let's say you're running Nevsky Joan. And then let's say that you're running a Zhu Liang with YSG. If that's the case, like if these are your three armies right now, right? Which army do you need a commander for the most? The answer is archers, right? You need an archer commander the most. Would King Arthur be insane? Yes. And if you have great cavalry gear and armaments, then maybe you still go for King Arthur. But assuming all your gear is the same and all of your armaments are roughly the same across all three of these, your best choice would be to replace the YSG with something like Hermann Prime, right? Now, you know, let's say that your current setup is something like this, right? Where you just got in a season of conquest and you're still rocking the Minamoto behind your Huo, then obviously the best thing that you could do here would be to bench your Minamoto and get King Arthur, right? Like that would be the play for you. And then same thing like with infantry, let's say these are your three armies, you're still running Guan for whatever reason. Well, then obviously the best thing to do would be to get your hands on Liu Che, right? So, you know, I just want to paint that picture where like you want to look at what army that you have that needs a new commander the most. So I know a lot of you are excited about, you know, King Arthur, and I am too, and I'm definitely going to be getting him, but like just keep in mind that you want to improve the weakest link, and this is again assuming that you have all similar gear, similar armaments. If you know, if you don't have similar gear, similar armaments, and you just want to go all in on Cavs because that has your best gear and best armaments, then go ahead and do it. Even if your other armies are lacking a little bit, you know, if the gear and armaments can't keep up with the best in slot commanders, then, you know, you might as well go all in on one troop type. So that's kind of my rough draft as to what I'm thinking about for these commanders. Hopefully you guys found this video useful. I'm sorry that I can't tell all of you individually what you should be getting, but hopefully you can like understand my thought process in this video and then kind of apply that to your own unique situation, because everyone's going to have a different situation on your account. So that's that, guys. If you found this video useful or informative or entertaining or anything like that, drop a thumbs up on it. It really helps out the channel a ton. It helps get this video out into the YouTube algorithm so other Rise of Kingdoms players might see it. And while you're down there, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video. And let me know in the comment section below what commander you plan on getting from the commander swap event. What are your plans for this event? Are you excited about this event? Do you have more questions about this event? Let me know in the comment section below. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.